Thank you very much for being here tonight. So I'm Carol Willis. I'm the founder, director, and curator of the Skyscraper Museum, and we're very appropriately and very appreciatively here tonight at 550 Madison, the original AT&T Building, designed by Philip Johnson of Johnson & Burgee, to celebrate the building and the team, the original landmark building, as well as the team of architects who came together. SNØHETTA, represented by Craig Dykers, and we'll be giving our awards out later after just a couple of speakers. Philippe Perret from GENSLER, and David Rockwell, there he is, from the Rockwell Group, who has reinvented the space that we're in right now called the Great Hall, but you may or may not have already wandered around some of the periphery where you can see the other kind of inventive rooms, all on various themes that have provide in 21st century terms, the amenity package that make the tenancy in this building so appealing. This is the debut of the space tonight, where other than the OLAYAN Group's own events here, we're the first not-for-profit, we're the first organization to use the space. So thank you so much, OLAYAN and Eric Horvat, who you will hear from briefly tonight, and Beth Wolfowitz from RXR for hosting us in the space tonight. And what could be more appropriate than to have the Skyscraper Museum being here in this landmark, first postmodern skyscraper. So the theme for the brief remarks, it's going to be a very brief program this evening, but the theme is kind of the past, present, and future of the skyscraper, because in this project we bring together a building from 1978, finished in 1984, that represents a change in the taste and in the architectural culture of the skyscraper, especially in New York, but across the United States as well. The project by Philip Johnson really marked the first kind of pioneering éclat of a new way of thinking about style that Johnson himself described as his preservation mode. And when you walk around to see the various rooms, I hope you'll go into the room, the hearth room, just adjacent, where we have two interviews with Philip Johnson in video clips, where he talks about the idea, the concept for this building, and some of which he discussed. And in 1978, he mentioned their client, AT&T, the largest corporation in America at the time, wanting a building that befitted their status, but also represented the building that was the Seagram building of the 1970s, of the kind of the beginning of the last quarter of the 20th century. That style then was enormously influential and consequential. This building marked the kind of first kind of serious rethinking and popular imagination of a postmodern style that had been percolating through the world of architecture. And I'm seeing Paul Goldberger around here somewhere, who at the time that this building was just being finished, and you'll hear Philip Johnson say in the video clips, well, Mr. Goldberger liked this building. On the other hand, Edelweiss Huxtable, as Johnson said, hated the building, and said if Edelweiss didn't like it, you were dead in New York. So this building was enormously controversial at the time, just as Johnson himself was a controversial architect, who became even more so as after his death and as his career began to be reevaluated. You don't remember in New York, but people of a certain age, like me, who, when I was in graduate school back as this building was being designed, one looked from afar at a close circle of New Yorkers who were reshaping thoughts about architecture and theory. And we have actually Alan Ritchie, who was here tonight, who was a later partner of Philip Johnson. And we have one of my board members, the talented board members that I want to say a special shout out tonight. I won't name all of them, but if you see a little purple boutonniere, you will see the small and very talented group of individuals who are the trustees of the Skyscraper Museum, one of whom is Sautine C. There she is over there, whose very first project as a young engineer at LARA, at Leslie Robertson Associates, was this building. So we have history in the room, and we have a lot of people who remember the 1970s and 80s and the way that postmodernism kind of virally, to use a phrase that was not common at the time, swept through architecture. And it really changed the next 10 or 15 years of stylistic practice as that filtered through and maybe even down through the rest of America. So this building really is a pioneering building and has been recognized as a landmark. I saw Fred Bland, and I think Sarah Carroll is here as well, the chairman and the vice chair of the Landmarks Preservation Commission, who have in designating this building, saved its history for all times for New York. So even though there are many people, and I've had conversations even tonight about how never my favorite building, or I didn't think it's very good, and I'm not sure about it now, those opinions remain firm in people's minds. But the building is ready to be, and has been now, reinvented as well. And so I'm going to pass the microphone over to the chairman of the Skyscraper Museum, who is a skyscraper architect, Jamie von Klimper, who will continue the theme about the reinvention of this building before Kathleen McGuigan, another of the board members, and the editor-in-chief of the Architectural Record for a little bit longer before she steps down, will then offer the award, a few remarks before the awards, and then we'll have the awardees come up. So let me hand it over to Jamie now.
Thank you, Carol, and thanks for bringing together this group of people. It's especially more than a congenial group of people who support each other in the community of our work, of design, real estate, construction, et cetera. It seems to me to be an unusually special group fitting perfectly in this room. So I'll just take a couple of things. First of all, as you said, Carol, looking forward, this is not only about the past, but this is an occasion of bringing a building into the next, or this and maybe the next century, thinking about the way people behave in buildings, which is changing, about technologies, carbon footprint, and much more. And so this is not the first time that the museum has honored and focused on existing buildings, something we'll be doing much more of as we move ahead. Empire State Building some time ago, Chase Manhattan Plaza, and the World Financial Center. And so showing us that a tall building can actually be something that layers into a city in a variety of different incarnations. We don't always think of layers on height, but it actually is happening. And it's a great thing for our city and for our craft. And this project came about through, as we know, from at least those three architects and firms that are being honored tonight, through teamwork. And that's a very, very important aspect of the tall building, the large project. And we think of Rockefeller Center as a kind of epitome of a team working together. And so I think I haven't seen any kicking, scratching, or biting. Everybody seems to have gotten along. David, the team from GENSLER, Craig and his partner, Michelle Delk, wonderful what you've done. And so I think that's about it.
I've been asked to particularly welcome the architects who we are honoring tonight, and I am very pleased to do so. They are, well, the ones who are going to come forward representing the firms are Craig Dykers, who's the founding partner of SNØHETTA, David Rockwell, founder of the Rockwell Group, and Philippe Paré, the managing director and principal at GENSLER, and also many of their colleagues from their firms are here too. This landmark building is actually very personal for me, as I have lived on 55th Street for many decades, and I have navigated around it and through it countless times in its various iterations. But to me, it was always very telling that that famous image of Philip Johnson on the cover of Time magazine when this building first opened, you see him clutching a model of the building as if it were a toy, or as Mark Lamster says in his recent biography of Johnson, as it were a tablet delivered down from the heights of Mount Sinai. And it makes a kind of crazy sense that it's sort of an object, because really, whether it's a model or at full scale, the building was always kind of considered an object, with its most singular feature being, of course, in the public imagination, was the distinctive top, which was so Instagrammable on Manhattan's skyline from the start, if only there had been Instagram then. I think it's fair to say that Johnson was far more focused on the architecture than the urbanism. I mean, this is quite a shallow tower, which is the one thing it has in common with the Seagram building that Johnson worked on as a young man, but without that elegant setback. In fact, he did something quite the opposite. He created that high colonnaded arcade, which has mostly been filled in now, and it was actually originally, I found, a bit gloomy. And he placed the open atrium behind the building, and I thought that was a zoning trade-off for height, but Craig Dykers, who now knows more than anybody on the planet about this building, informed me that it was because the building actually pushes out a little bit onto the sidewalk and Madison Avenue, so that the corner offices have views up and down the street. And so they had to give something back to the public. AT&T thought it could be their AT&T Museum. That lasted for a minute. Then we had a Sony Experience Center, etc. The Sony Corporation closed the atrium in the back. That was still a public space. I used to bring my daughter in her stroller there on a wintry, crummy day. But I just want to say, if you haven't seen it yet, what's so refreshing is that SNØHETTA has created this beautiful large garden plaza there, almost doubling the former space to 21,000 square feet by removing the annex that had that Sony store and part of the Sony experience. And though the garden was designed before COVID, the fact that it is both sheltered with a glazed canopy, a very beautiful canopy, but open to the air, seems to suit our current desires for public space, as does the fact that it's very lushly planted within the city's concrete jungle. And I can't wait, as somebody in the neighborhood, to see what it's going to be like next summer. GENSLER did this sort of really beautifully kind of subdued and detailed redesign of the building's lofty lobby, which must have been a bit of a trick because it's so tall compared to its actual footprint, but also opened the back of it onto the garden and sort of left the drama to that unforgettable artwork, that 27-ton sphere called Solid Sky by a Polish-German artist named Alicia Quede, I hope I'm saying her name right, that is suspended overhead. And, those chains it's suspended with, look like they're made of kryptonite. But personally, I did not want to walk under it. I don't know about anybody else. And here we are in the Sky Lobby. Back in the day, I used to come up here for press screenings of films from Sony Studios. And it was always a very kind of strange, fussy, I don't know what it was. But now, under the aegis of the Rockwell Group, the feeling has vastly changed. Of course, it's highlighted by the stunning pair of Dorthea Rockburne murals that were originally installed in 1993. But there's just a new sense of spaciousness and a beautiful material palette that the Rockwell Group has brought to this space and to some of the other spaces around here. And I'd also invite you to actually explore more parts of the building and talk to Craig or his team about a lot of less visible but important things that they did to improve this building. So despite the range of critical opinions that this building has always sparked, as Carol said, of course, 550 Madison is a key work in New York's long architectural history. And I do think in this current chapter, the architects from three of the most major firms in New York and internationally have certainly opened up and humanized the experience of the building for all New Yorkers. So please welcome or Beth.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name's Eric, head of real estate for OLAYAN. Look, I don't have much to add. There's a lot of people here that are more qualified to talk about architecture. I just want to say thank you to David and to SNØHETTA and to GENSLER for the amazing job they did to reinvent this building. To go from a single tenant building to a building that can compete with multiple tenants and really deliver and compete with the One Vanderbilts or the Hudson Yards of the world is no small feat, especially when you're keeping the soul of the building, which they really did. So I just compliment all of you and congratulations for the great job you've done and for working together so seamlessly. I can attest there were no catfights of any kind. They're total professionals and they did an amazing job. So congratulations to you, and thank you everybody for being here for our first event.
Before I relinquish the microphone, I'm looking at another one of our board members, Purnima Kapoor, looking around, representing the Department of City Planning from the earlier iteration of this project. And just to make even more of an emphatic praise for the plaza and what it contributes to New York, because this is SNØHETTA's big move in the building, the one that's most obvious, and which changes for the most people the quality of their lives in Midtown. I just want to say thank you to the government partners as well who made this possible.
Thanks. Thank you. Well, I think all of us will probably say a few words, so I'll kick it off for everyone. It's definitely an honor to be here. I came to this building first in about 1982. I hitchhiked all the way from Austin, Texas, just to see this building. Still under construction. I returned in '84. So it's meant a lot to me personally. We'll have more thanks momentarily, but to start this off, just to thank Philip Johnson for giving something that was so gnarly to deal with. It was an enormous challenge to work with this project, but all the effort really paid off. We came to this building in 2016, so I guess that was about 6 years ago, as a result of an international architectural competition to revive the spirit of this great building. And so we were very fortunate to have won that exercise and begin the master planning process for how the building could be developed. So we spent about 6 years, which is about the same time that it took to design and build the original building. So the same amount of time to revive it. During the following 3 years after winning the competition, we were able to recreate views from Madison to the West Side public space. We rotated these elevators that are behind you to allow the windows through to the west, not only in the lobby, but also on these floors, which was a very special move and supported by OLAYAN. I can't thank them enough for providing that support, because it's not an easy thing to rotate elevators 90 degrees and provide that grand arch that everyone so loves. We worked quite a lot with the things that you can't see, the HVAC, the mechanical systems. We refined them and made them healthier using an outside air system with our engineers that removed a lot of the mechanical equipment in the building, and that allowed us to increase the ceiling heights in the retail spaces on either side of the lobby back to their original height, 60 feet up in the air. So when you go in there as they open, you'll see the original spatial geometry that Philip Johnson intended. We also were able to clear out the mechanical mezzanine that clogged up those circular portal windows on the north and south side. And we were able to add space to this building, amazingly, to invite 2,000 more workers to occupy this building. And finally, we were very fortunate to be able to create the framework for our dear colleagues GENSLER and Rockwell to use their creative minds to make these spaces even more viable. So we were happy to work with them on this. And lastly, the thing that I would like to say is that it wasn't really about the building, although the building is important. It was about the city of New York. And Hutham Olayan has said that many times. This is a project about the city. And so the urban quality of what we were trying to do here really was the driving force. And that I would just want to ask my colleague, landscape architect Michelle Delk, to talk about the garden, and then we'll pass it along.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here this evening. I'll just say a couple of brief things, but I want to share how just appreciative I am of everyone here who recognized that we live in a world and in a city that is really full of life. And that was really the core of the inspiration for transforming the public space into the garden that you can visit today. We also know that to thrive and to grow, life is best when nurtured. And now, after all the care that has been brought here, we can see how moments that contribute to our lives can unfold right here in the gardens at 550 Madison. So I invite you to visit the space as soon as you can if you haven't been down there. I also really do hope that this transformation might inspire others to see that no matter how big or small, every person, every building, and every room, inside or outside, can positively contribute to living and exploring our city together. So I'll just say thank you to everyone who contributed, and thank you to the Skyscraper Museum for inviting us here tonight.
There really isn't a script for a building like this one or a project like this one. So in true 550 fashion, I'm coming without notes tonight. So I just want to reminisce a little bit on the project and the journey. And one thing that occurred to me is sometimes great projects happen, I've noticed, when we stumble on clients who have a very clear vision of what they want, yet at the same time have the wisdom to let us do what we do best. And I think if there's something that I retain from this experience is that we had the pleasure of having both. We had an incredible vision from Miss OLAYAN, a steadfast vision, and at the same time, the wisdom that she imparted on the process, letting us do what we do best, nudging us when we needed to be nudged, and really assembling around us this incredibly talented cast of characters, whether from the ownership, from real estate, from the best and most recognized design firms in the city. And when you assemble all these ingredients, sometimes things can go terribly wrong. In this case, because there was a strong and clear vision, and at the same time the wisdom to let us do what we do best, well, we're enjoying tonight the fruit of those efforts. So I just want to say thank you to the OLAYAN Group, RXR Group, everyone who touched the project. You know who you are, right? We all have 550 on our back tattooed. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Well, firstly, thank you to Jamie and Carol. It's an honor, and thank you to OLAYAN and RXR for inviting us on this totally unique adventure with incredible collaborators. I just want to say, seeing people in this space really for the first time is kind of amazing. It's not my phone. I work in the theater where Patti LuPone would grab that phone immediately. The reality is I am very privileged to be a part of this team. I've admired this building since 1984, which, was a moment in which it was so marked on the landscape of the city. It was also the moment in which we were forming Rockwell Group. So that was the very earliest time of us going into business. And I think it's just such a unique, unicorn, amazing piece of architecture. And the one thing I want to say is we've all been through this awful, surreal time in which for a couple years we couldn't gather to work, we couldn't gather to socialize, and in some ways we were thwarted from the very ways in which we engage with the world. So as you walk around these spaces, our challenge and our inspiration was to create a series of places where when you're working here, this is where you would come and connect. And you'd create a place that was a series of rooms that were all inspiring for being with other people, the one thing that can't be replaced. We had an amazing team at Rockwell Group. I thank them all for committing to making this so great. And we're very happy to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you all for being here tonight, but thank you for your support of the Skyscraper Museum. And your donations will help support my staff who are here tonight and all of our activities, and I thank them for being here and for working so hard on this event, and support the free admission that we offer at the Skyscraper Museum, where we're open on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays currently. So it's your help that makes that possible. So thank you all for contributing in that way to not just to the evening, but to the annual operating budget of the Skyscraper Museum that makes it available to all for free. So let me bring the architects forward and hand them their awards for their photographs.